Today I'm kitbashing Thousand Suns Rubric Marines using lots of Tomb King bits and pieces because I want Rubric Marines with sword and shield. So I'm starting with the basic Rubric body done. So the legs, torso, head, the backpack, all of it's ready for the extra bits and pieces. And I'm gonna use the kopesh from the Exalted Sorcerer's sprue, because kopeshi work well with the Tomb Kings. But you gotta pick the right kopesh here, because there's one, this one over here, where the arm just sticks out to the side. I guess that's for the one that's sort of ascending up into the sky. That doesn't really work for my regular Rubric Marines because they're not really psychic. So I gotta use the other one, which is more sort of held down and more of a natural pose for a guy with a sword and shield. Now for the shields, I'm just gonna use the standard Thousand Suns Rubric Marine arm, but I gotta cut off the bolter, of course. So I just snip off the front part of the gun, the top part of the gun, clean this up, and then just glue the arm in place like this. That's a proper shield arm. I'm gonna add the shoulder pads, and then I have to prep the shield, because that Tomb Guard box that comes with a bunch of shields, but only 2 designs of them have no arm attached to them. And the others, they look like this. They have the skeleton arm attached to it. So I just gotta hack and saw and clip and get rid of this skeleton arm until it looks like this, and I'm just gonna stick it on his body with a little bit of poster putty, because I want to paint the body and the shield separately. First of all, because I want to have access to the miniature to actually paint it, and second of all, I want to paint the armor fairly different from the weapons and from the shield. So this just makes it easier for me. Now I've got 3 of these guys ready, but I want to explain a few of my choices in bits and kits and pieces that I used, because it might not be obvious right away. First of all, the Thousand Suns Rubric squad comes with 2 options in backpacks. You have these with the sort of bird heads on them, and you have the ones with these rounded balls on them. I picked not the bird heads, not because I didn't want any bird heads in here, but I want to make another Rubric squad, a 5-man squad that really has the avian theme, the bird theme going. So I want to save those backpacks for them, and that's why. Now I want to make a whole Thousand Suns army where every 5-man Rubric squad has gone out into the universe and now has come back together to fight together against a sort of common enemy. But they've gone out and they've changed, they've warped, they've adapted to their environment, and so they're bringing some of their environment back. And that's why these guys will look like Tomb King, Tomb Guard with sword and shield, with kopesh and shield. So they got these kind of backpacks, but I also gave them the shoulder pads that have a little scarab on them, because again, you got the choice in some eyes or scarabs or some other little zinch icons, and I went for scarabs because it makes sense. And I also made the choice to get the models that are stepping forward a little bit. So I got a little bit more dynamic poses for the guys with the kopesh and the shield than I would with guys with bolters standing in the back. I also gave him a kopesh from the sorcerers, because otherwise I would have 3 of the exact same, and I just want a little bit of variety in my guys. But here's the thing, your Rubric squad comes with an aspiring sorcerer that's going to lead the squad, but you can also give one of them a massive cannon. This thing, the Soul Reaper cannon. And I'm not gonna add a cannon to a sword and board squad, but I do want to have one of the Rubric Marines stand out so that you can see from a distance, hey, that's the guy with a cannon. It just simplifies things with line of sight, pulling models, you know, all of that stuff. And I think it just gives me opportunity to add something cool again to the squad and not just have 4 of the same rubrics. So I got this guy, and this guy is standing still. He doesn't have that step forward in his pose, and I want to give him a sort of larger, oversized kopesh. But I only have one size kopesh on all of these Terminator and Exalted Sorcerer sprues, so I think the solution is to just give him a massive kopesh on a staff. And in particular, this staff that is supposed to be for the aspiring sorcerer. And then I'm taking that other kopesh from the Exalted Sorcerers, because I don't think I'll ever have a pose where a guy is standing like this with kopesh. And I already have 1 extra of these. I might have another one, and then I have this one, so that's 3 where I have an arm just standing like this with a kopesh. I think it's a weird pose, and I don't think I'll ever really use it. So I'm just gonna clip off a little bit closer to the kopesh to give me the exact space where I want to cut. That's there. And I'm gonna glue this on top of the staff to make a kopesh glaive like this. I think it's pretty cool. I like the weapon. Maybe when I expand this Rubric Marine squad to a 10-man squad, I can add more of these big weapons, and then I'll have to figure out another way to identify the Soul Reaper cannon. But I already see a little bit of an issue here. This staff is a little bit too long at the bottom, but I think I can fix that when I do the basing. These are going to be on a sort of desert temple base, so I can probably stick this somewhere into a groove, or maybe have it hang over the base as I'm doing now. But he also needs a shield, of course. But I'm running into a bit of an issue with the shield arm, of course, because the Thousand Suns, they have these arms that are coming from the left hand that are supposed to support the bolter, and they have this pretty weird pose if it's supposed to be a shield arm. You have to turn the hand hold it a little bit closer. So I'm just gonna go look for something else. And I found something. It's this Chaos Marine squad, the standard Chaos Legionnaires. I think I can work with this arm over here. And I think I can pose him like this. I just gotta give him a proper hand. And it's of course the hand from the Aspiring Sorcerer's bolt pistol, because I'm not gonna give him a bolt pistol. And like that, I got my Soul Reaper cannon bearing Rubric Marine done. And he's the only one who's holding the shield the way it's supposed to be, like this, putting it down on the ground and then fighting with his glaive. But I guess the other guys, since they're fighting with swords, they fight differently anyway. And they're all left-handed while this guy is right-handed. Now, there's a piece of wargear missing, because Rubrics, they can carry an icon. And in Warhammer Fantasy, every unit can carry a banner, so do the Tomb Kings as well. So I'm gonna use this thing as an icon for this squad. That banner pole is a little bit fragile though, so I'm just putting a little pin in it and sticking it into the backpack like this. That will make it possible for me to actually play with these guys, because I don't want display models. I want models that I can play with. But I quite like this guy, and yeah, you could have just said, okay, the dude with the big weapon is the dude with the icon. But it's fun to just add the icon as well. And it's part of the look, the Tomb King look. It needs to be there on all of these miniatures. Now it's time for the Aspiring Sorcerer. And you might be wondering what the hell I'm gonna do, because sorcerers are supposed to have these staffs that they can cast fireballs with and their spells with. But I want to have a more melee sorcerer, so more of a warlock, somebody with a kopesh and the other hand casting spells. So I'm just gonna go for the standard Aspiring Sorcerer model. The same thing, you know, I gave him the backpack that doesn't have the avian theme, the bird head. And I'm just gonna give him the arm that's casting a spell, like so. Casting a spell, sort of a touch spell, because he's close to somebody. And then on the other side, I want a sword arm like this one. But of course not this sword specifically. I cut that off and this is gonna become a Prosperine kopesh, like so. I took the one from the sorcerers this time because I like the serrated edge and I think it's a cool variation on the kopesh that the other guys have. So now you might be thinking, look, you got a guy with a massive sword and an icon and then a little guy with a kopesh next to it. How are people going to see which one is the Aspiring Sorcerer and which one is the Rubric Marine? Well, I got an idea about that. You see, almost every Thousand Sons Sorcerer is a massive piece of shit. I've been listening to Ahriman Undying, the audiobook that you can get on Audible now, and they really are just psychopaths. They will sacrifice billions of civilians and slaves and even Rubric Marines if it means they get a little bit of knowledge or power. They'll even sacrifice other Thousand Sons Sorcerers to demons as sort of selling their soul in return for power or protection or anything like that. And so I don't think that they would care much about the state that the Rubric Marines are in. The armor doesn't have to look good, it just needs to be functional, and I think that could really be shown in the proper paint scheme. But I'm first gonna distress these Rubric Marines a lot. I'm gonna damage their armor, sort of taking these knocks out of their shields, but I'm also gonna do it to the rest of the armor, the shoulder pads, the helmets. I'm gonna just bang them up a lot. But I wanna show this disdain for others, this psychopathic tendencies, this narcissistic twist that almost all these sorcerers have in the paint scheme. But there's about half a dozen other things I want to do with the paint scheme as well. So let's just go through them bit by bit. First of all, the squad needs to reference the Tomb Kings. Of course, this is going to be the Egyptian styled squad, and of course it's a Thousand Sons army, so everything has some Egyptian theme, but this really needs to reference the Tomb Kings, and that's why I kept the armor white, because I want to see if I can make them look like skeletons. But I also need some blues and some reds in here, so this is some Contrast Ultramarines blue for the cloth, and some Contour blue and Corn red for little details. And again, I'm making a difference between the regular Rubrics and the Aspiring Sorcerers. See, the Rubrics, they got a little bit of red here on their shield and a tiny strip of blue, and that's it. But the Sorcerer, him, I'm gonna get everything nice and painted up, very ornate. There's plenty of red and blue and gold stripes over here, the same here on his leg. Again, to set him apart. If the Aspiring Sorcerer has resources to spend, he's going to spend it on himself. His armor is going to look good and maintained properly, and the armor of the Rubrics doesn't really matter. Now, the exact shade of blue or red doesn't really matter. What matters is that it's dark, because I want all of the armor to be pretty dark. So I'm also washing it now with a brown wash, because then all the magical effects and the mutations, they all stick out a lot better. Look at this guy. This is my Thousand Sons Demon Prince. All of his flesh bits are like neon bright, and then the armor is quite dark and gritty and dirty. This is another way that I can unify the army later on. If everybody looks differently, but they all have the same idea of a dark armor with bright mutations and bright spell effects, and that ties everything together again. That's starting to look pretty good now. I did a reduction pass, removing the grime with some white spirits, and while I was doing that, of course the armor gets really wet from white spirits and started to shine really nicely. So I'm gonna see if I just put a layer of this hard coat, which is a gloss varnish over it. That should keep it glossy. If it then looks better than like this. I think it's pretty cool. It gives a bit of a porcelain vibe. Like it's almost a fragile ceramic, which it's supposed to be ceramite, but not fragile. Anyway, let's highlight some of the gold a little bit with some auric armor gold. And I've made their weapons a little bit more shiny as well. Some Gehenna's gold, some Retributor armor, and now some Reichland flesh shades to give it a bit of warmth. Because you gotta imagine a really corrupt planetary governor or modern day dictator. His personal guard, they have great weapons, they have great tech. They got the night vision goggles, the best guns, the best armor, and so on and so forth. But the thing with humans is, they want to have a good looking uniform as well. They wanna look the part. You don't have that problems with automatons. You don't have the problems with Rubric Marines, so you don't have to care too much about the state of their armor, as long as it's armor. But the state of a blade, their weapons, yeah, that matters a whole lot more. So I guess this aspiring sorcerer has instructed his servants to spend time sharpening the blades, polishing them, cleaning them, keeping them in perfect shape. While the armor, well, that can stay rough, dirty and nasty. And I'm taking this utilitarian approach to your underlings a little bit further with some rust here and there. You know, these are stabilizers, and he also has exhausts on his backpack. And they get hot, so they rust. And just check under any car outside. Their exhausts are rusted through. Because if it's a rusted exhaust, it's still an exhaust. It still works. It still does the job that an exhaust should do. You know, we care about stuff like catalytic converters and the noise that a rusted through exhaust would make. But we don't really care about how it looks. But we humans are vain, and so we make our pipes chrome, as if to say that my exhaust is cleaner and better than yours. And if we're vain, well, then a narcissistic, self-centered, egotistical maniac like a Thousand Suns aspiring sorcerer, he definitely wants chrome exhaust. And while I got the silver out, I'm gonna work on some of this battle damage. So these things here have bullet holes, for example, and these scratches. And I'm just gonna paint them very lightly with some silver and then drop some dirty down rust in there. And I intentionally hit some of the ridges, the outer parts of these scratches and bullet holes with the silver, so that it looks like there the paint sort of scuffed off and now the inner parts are starting to rust. Because of course this isn't pure gold, you know, they're not walking around with solid gold shields and solid gold armor trim, especially not the regular rubrics. No sorcerer would do that. And speaking of the sorcerer, it's time to work on his armor a little bit as well. So first, a little bit of auric armor gold everywhere to make his gold shine just that little bit more. And I want to take the sorcerer really quite far in how ornamental everything is. I want it to look stupid. I want it to look gaudy. I want you to look at him and go, well, I would not have gone that far with all of my decorations and my bling and so on and so forth. So I'm working with some of these technical paints. This one is called Spiritstone Red. I already worked with Soulstone Blue to touch up all of his little gems, and also this sort of candy stripe that he has. It's all now nice and shiny, kind of resembling gems. And I want to do the same here around the shoulder pads. But then I need some more of this Soulstone Blue down here. So I'm just gonna go to these sort of protectors of his legs, because they're kind of ornamental anyway, and I'm just gonna turn these into this sort of, I don't know, gemstone color as well. Yeah, look at it. That's gaudy over the top and really prohibitively expensive. You can just imagine this guy going into battle and all that inlay shatters at the first contact, and then after combat they have to spend a fortune to get that armor back up to what it used to be. Highly impractical, but exactly what I can see a Thousand Sun sorcerer do. But it's also getting quite ugly in my opinion. It's not my style, but it fits the story really well. So let's push it a little bit further, and I'm gonna add some decals. I already have here the sort of Zinch icon over there, Thousand Suns icon on his other shoulder pad, but I also really want to add some runes to his casting arm. So here on his wrist and over there on his upper arm, his bicep, he has a little bit of flat surface, not exactly flat, but flat enough. And I'm gonna see if I can add some runes on there, and I picked the Doom rune, Demon rune, and Skull. Because, you know, Doom, Skull, Demon, I think it fits the whole theme. I put a little drop of Druchii Violet on these runes to make him kind of glow slightly, a little bit of purple. And I went a bit further. I gave him this sort of snake rune over there, a bird skull over there. This one's from the Raven Guard, that one's from the Snakebite Orcs. And I'm quite happy with the state he's in now, so it's time for some magic effects, starting with his sword, because I want to make his sword look like it's a summoned weapon. It's not a physical weapon, it's something he conjured up. Maybe it's a demon he's holding by the tail, who knows. So I'm going to start with some neon purple over here, and I'm going to blend in some blue fluor as well to get a bit of a more darker purple effect. And I'm using purple because purple is the color of death magic in Warhammer Fantasy in the old world. So it's appropriate for a Tomb King's unit to be dabbling in death magic. So I got quite something nice going here. I went back and forth with these fluor paints, and I did a little bit of OSL over there. I don't like very strong OSL effects, but a little bit is cool. So now I'm just going to dry brush it a little bit with some Nagaroth Night. And now with a tiny brush and a little bit of white spirits, I'm going to draw little lines in the blade. So this will scrape off the fluor powder and remove all of the enamel paints, and just show the white base, so it kind of looks like there's a glow coming from inside the weapon. And now I want to make it sparkle a little bit, so I'm taking some silver and I'm just stippling on a little bit in those spots that I just cleared up. And then finally a little bit of art coat, the gloss varnish. And again, I'm stippling this on randomly, so this does not just go onto the silver, it goes everywhere. Now that's a pretty cool magical sword right there. It looks like it's otherworldly, it's summoned, it's not exactly demonic, which is cool. I want him to sort of conjure this weapon up out of nowhere. Now for his other hand, I was originally thinking of just painting a bit of OSL, make it look like he's casting a spell. But what if I can actually make him throw a skull as a spell, like a sort of touch spell that he touches, grasps out, and the skull is coming out of his hand and sort of taking a bite out of his opponent. I think that's a pretty cool idea. So I'm just going to take one of these Tomb Guard skulls, and then I've added a couple of wires to it, one 2mm and two 1mm. The 1mm is just for decor, the 2mm is actually for the support, and I painted him up like he's a little bit of a flaming skull, the same purple as the sword. Now he has a hole in his hand as well where the eye used to be, and I'm just going to fit this in there, like so. Then I let that settle, and then I just bent those little wires in place so it looks like they come out of those runes that he has on his arm, and I need to work a little bit more. I think it's not glowing as well as it should, but I just want to finish the base first. So I've got some old iron and some new iron pigment powders to make it look like it's a sandy sort of temple base that they're standing on. And I added a couple of scarabs here and there. They have a few scarabs on their bases as well. And I gave my sorcerer here a little flaming skull. I think it would be cool to have that idea that he's casting death magic. So if there's a skull, if there is death around him, well, that's getting affected as well somehow. And now for the final touch on my sorcerer, I'm going to use this stuff. This is AK Frost Effect. Because whenever I read a 40k book or listen to an audiobook, they always talk about warp frost. When there's lots of warp energy or psychic powers going off, there's like this frost forming. It's kind of a signal that somebody is casting magic or using spells. So this stuff, you're supposed to be able to just drop it directly onto the surface where you want some crystals to form. So I'm going to have some crystals here on his arm, and I'm going to try to do some around his feet as well, because that's often how warp frost is described. Like somebody's on the other side of the wall casting spells, and now ice is forming on your side of the wall. So why not have a little bit of frost here in the desert? And then my first Rubric Marine squad looks like this. And I'm really happy with how they turned out. I mean, look at them. The beautiful white, almost porcelain bone armor on the Rubrics is a really nice nod to the skeletons of the Tomb Kings. The old worn gold, the red and the blue, that's not really that shiny and bright anymore, and the battle damage. Plenty of these guys are missing an eye lens, for example, but it doesn't matter. They're automata. They don't need their lenses anymore. And then the aspiring sorcerer. I really wanted to make him stand apart from the squad and still kind of fit in. So the whole candy stripe, red, white and blue that he has, the flashing spell effects, it all sets him apart, but the gold still ties him to the rest of the squad. And if you see him together with the rest, he really fits in and he is part of the squad. Now, I'm not that happy with the Warp Frost, how it turned out, but it's the first time I'm using this effect. I added a little bit of snow, just a normal basic material, and some ice sparkles, another basic material, to kind of zhuzh it up a little bit and make it look a little bit better. I think I just have to do more Rubric Marines and more sorcerers, exalted sorcerers, aspiring sorcerers, all the sorcerers, and practice a little bit more with this frost effect, and then I can always come back to this guy and fix him up. Now, I'm gonna be working on an Iron Warriors Demon Prince next, and you can already see that if you're a channel member or a patron, because channel members and patrons, they get 1 week early access. For the rest, well, you're gonna have to wait a week and see what comes then. In the meantime, maybe check out this video next.